there's only one person to put everything to. All about the Rwanda deal in the last night in the Lords. Apparently, Labour are going to save the NHS. Cameron's talking about Houthi strikes, and we're speaking to the legend that is Benedict Spence. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm all right.
Where do you want to start? Your choice.
Well, I think we should... Sorry, can I choose?
Sure.
You are in charge.
Why not?
I think we should start by talking about the political decisions that happen when we decide with the US to conduct military action in the way we've just seen. Interestingly, we heard from the Labour Party this morning, last time we conducted these types of strikes, the Leader of the House, also Keir Starmer, was briefed. That didn't happen yesterday. What kind of measures do you think Rishi Sunak, the Foreign Secretary, the Defence Secretary, weigh up when they decide to act and how they decide to do it?
I mean, right now, what is of the biggest concern, not just actually to Rishi Sunak, but also to Joe Biden, is that if this is allowed to sort of endure, the impact that it's going to have on inflation. And with a general election coming up later this year in this country and a presidential election in the United States, having just gone through a very tumultuous period of inflation and people feeling a lot poorer for it, I don't think people will be very forgiving if they think that their government's allowed this to just happen on their watch. So whilst, the decision may well have been weighed up to brief Sir Keir Starmer or anybody else, they may well have just decided, as they did first time around, actually, to say, well, time is kind of the essence here. This could have a huge financial impact. It is already going to have a huge financial impact. Inflation is going to come back probably around April or May as a result of this.
Which people need to know when they're saying we are wasting money on these attacks, or we're trying to be. Benedict, you're absolutely right. Because if you can't get your foodstuffs, because they're having these boats to be forced to go 42 days round whatever strait it is, because they'll be attacked, that will impact on your money in your pocket. So then you've got a Prime Minister who, if he does something about it, is going to be accused of starting a conflict for what?
I mean, think about where most of Europe's LNG comes from. It comes from Bahrain, it comes from Qatar, and it comes from the UAE, and it all goes through that strait, except, of course, it's not going through that strait now. It has to circumvent all the way around South Africa. And it's very interesting. If you look at the countries that have, for example, recently joined the BRICS movement. It includes Saudi Arabia, it includes Iran, it includes Egypt, it includes Ethiopia, none of which are traditionally allies, but look at where they all happen to be, around the Straits of Hormuz. What happens to also be a member of the BRICS? Oh, it's South Africa, which a lot of these ships will have to
Let me read you as one of my good friends. This is from a friend of mine, and because I can't answer this, you can.
Sure.
His view is we can't fix potholes, we can't feed our poor people, our public services are in the bin, we've got illegals flooding into this country across the channel, but we can spend billions on making the Red Sea safe and sending the latest top-of-the-range weapons to everyone else in the world. We are a joke. We don't look after our own. How do you, Benedict Spence, respond to that?
Well, we could look after our own a lot better if we were producing a lot more of our own electricity and our own energy and our own food. Ultimately, those are the key things that affect prices. Those are the key things that affect inflation. If you decide that you're going to outsource all of this, and the best sources of this for electricity, for fuel, for example, are Russia, or the Middle East, well, you've kind of backed yourself into a corner. If you're not going to drill in the North Sea and you're not going to frack, the United States has decided to do both of these, and it relatively is fine compared to how Europe is doing. But if you decide you're not going to do that, even though you're sitting on top of it, well, you only have one option, and that is to make sure that the Suez Canal stays open, that the Straits of Hormuz and the Gulf of Aden remain threat-free. That is why we went in heavy on the Somali pirates all those years ago. That's why we have to do this now.
Our bank balance is obviously important, cost of living, so too is our healthcare. The NHS is really interesting in terms of the dividing lines between Labour and the Conservatives in terms of how they want to solve it. A new stance from Labour. For the last few elections, what they say is the NHS needs more money. Different. Over the last 2 years, maybe, murmurings from the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, that are different strategies at play. He's saying today, I've seen and identified £10 billion worth of savings in the NHS. We're going to cut that out. We're going to make the NHS more efficient and make it run better. It's an interesting strategy from them. It also sounds a bit too good to be true.
I think, too good to be true, we'll come on to that. But it's clever politics, and it's because Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting, they're not idiots, not like the previous incumbents of their positions. Actually, they do recognise that people, over the last few years, as much as they were very happy to protect the NHS over COVID, people recognise that the NHS is not being run very well. I think there's a lot more disillusionment with it than there used to be, and now they feel they can get away with those kind of lines. They also recognise that they are the only party that can also get away with electorally saying we're going to reform it. The Tories can't do that, but Labour can. Because people don't trust the Tories not to sell it off and turn it into an American system, which they're never going to do, because that would be political suicide. But there is still this idea that because the Tories were the party of Thatcher, that they'll turn it into a Reagan kind of system.
Doesn't it say, I mean, the piece by Harry Cole on page 10 of The Sun is fantastic. He says, is Res Streeting ready to take on the unions and be the most unpopular man? He says, and this is Streeting, you can't just keep on pouring ever-increasing amounts of money into a leaky bucket. You've got to deal with the bucket itself. That's unheard of. I said this, Sarah, I'd love your response. This isn't just parking your tanks on the Tory line. They've gone straight through the front door. We are absolutely used to a Labour Party, Benedict, that says, oh, they don't have enough money, give them more money, let's print some more money. This is a Labour Party saying there are people in jobs being paid to have virtue-signalling initiatives that are ridiculous. This is seismic, isn't it?
I was going to say, when was the last time either of you used a pager? When was the last time you saw somebody using a pager? The NHS accounts for 10% of all the pagers worldwide. It is technology that went out of date 20 years ago.
It 200 million on postage?
It spends huge amounts of money on technology that is out of date. So from that perspective, actually, the Labour Party is right. There is a lot of waste that could be alleviated. They won't say that it could be done by the private sector. They'll say that the government can do it, and fair enough if they believe that they can. But ultimately, there is an awful lot of institutional waste. But the big thing when it comes to expenditure that the Labour Party has highlighted is the amount of money that is being spent on importing staff, because staff has not been trained anyway. And this is where I have certain qualms about whether or not they're going to be able to save this money. If you're spending money bringing in doctors from abroad or nurses from abroad, that's all very well and good, but those have been trained by other countries. You've not paid for that training. If you want to solve that problem, you need to train people here. That, over the short to medium term, is a lot more expensive. Long term, it's the right thing to do.
And you need to make the NHS an attractive place so people want to stay and keep working for us.
So you need to pay people more.
For time, Benedict, we have to leave it there. Thank you ever so much.
Why can't we have him all morning? He's brilliant.
I don't make those decisions, I'm afraid.
Make all the other ones.
You made the other decision about what we were going to talk about.
She can't control time.
No, put your foot down, righty.
I've lost my authority, sadly.